They were pint-sized movie stars who delivered big laughs. The Little Rascals were the darlings of Hollywood before they could even drive or drink. But off-screen, the innocence of childhood didn't last long.
There was a high incidence of substance abuse. They would go into drugs or into alcohol because they were just so miserable trying to cope with adulthood.
Coincidence or curse?
I see you ended up just like I said you would.
We're going with Curse of the Little Rascals, a classic E! True Hollywood story.
There was a positive dream of being one of the world's
Her life's ambition was to be a star.
never recovered from the public scandal.
Back in the early 1900s, the motion picture industry was just getting started. Audiences loved the new phenomenon, and silent films were packing in people across the country. Producer Hal Roach wanted in on the action. Author Richard Bann.
Hal Roach is one of the founding fathers of Hollywood. He came to Los Angeles in 1912. He met Harold Lloyd, and he started his own motion picture studio in 1914.
The studio was located in Culver City, California, and was home to many of the top comedians in silent pictures.
The Lot of Fun, as it was known. There were the Harold Lloyd comedies, the Snub Pollard comedies. Harry Langdon had a series, Will Rogers had a series, Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chase, Thelma Todd.
Roach was always searching for fresh talent and new ideas. Actress Dorothy DeBorba.
He'd always say, I was looking out the window. Hammond Lumber Yard was where you could see out his office window. They were right across the street from Roach's. And he was watching these kids arguing over lumber that they had, scrap lumber that they had gotten. And he got this idea in his brain.
And he thought, I wonder if I could make a film or two out of this. The idea of life from a kid's angle, real kids doing real things. And from that experience sprang what became the Our Gang comedies.
From 1922 until he sold the series to MGM in 1938, Hal Roach produced 169 Our Gang films. The film series was renamed for television in the 1950s to The Little Rascals. Roach wasn't interested in casting pretentious child stars. Steve Ramsey runs a Little Rascals website.
He just had a knack of knowing if a kid looked real and acted real, and I think for the most part the kids didn't really realize that they were becoming Hollywood stars or anything. They were just real kids, they were having fun.
From 1922 to 1928, Roach's studio churned out 88 Our Gang comedies. When the talkies swept Hollywood in the 1930s, the Little Rascals rode the wave.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, Hal Roach presents for your entertainment and approval his Rascals in their latest Our Gang comedy entitled School's Out.
Well, I was just thinking, how can we go fishing if we gotta go to school all summer?
Our Gang stories were probably the best right at the beginning of the talkies.
Why, Chubby, I thought it was your turn to sit beside me today.
I don't feel like sitting down. I'll ride on the running board if you don't mind.
Some of the best stories.
Hey, lay off that lunch. That's mine.
Says you?
Says I.
Baloney.
Most realistic situations. Then the funniest ones.
But no one was laughing in 1930 when Pete the pup was found dead, and not by natural causes. The pooch was poisoned.
Hal Roach Studios had a location ranch on Robertson Boulevard, and that property was operated for him by an Italian immigrant named Tony Campanero. And it was called the Arnez Ranch. All these animals were at the Arnez Ranch except for Pete the pup. Pete was owned by a man named Harry Loosenay, and Tony Campanero was jealous of Harry Loosenay. When they're making Teacher's Pet, Pups as Pups, and so on, the dog, Pete, was poisoned. and they were never able to prove conclusively that it was Tony Campanaro, but everyone suspected that it was.
There was more bad news on the way for the Little Rascals. In 1931, 13-year-old Norman Chaney, better known as Chubby, got the sack because he was too old. The child star returned to his hometown in Maryland, where he tried to live a normal life. By 1935, Norman ballooned to 300 pounds. The 17-year-old became sick and underwent an operation at Johns Hopkins for a glandular condition.
I think that he would have been diagnosed and treated today. At the time, I don't think they had anything they could do for him, and he just kept gaining weight.
After surgery, Chaney's weight dropped to 136 pounds, but the operation proved too much for Chubby. Former child star Paul Peterson.
Now remember, this is mid-30s, and the surgery they proposed was frankly very risky, because surgery is. And sure enough, he had complications after surgery.
Chubby became gravely ill and died on May 29, 1936. Norman was only 18 years old. Back in Hollywood, producers couldn't keep the Little Rascals little forever. The series became a revolving door for child actors.
I think people don't realize that there were different sets of the gang, because the R Gang started in 1922. And as we got too big, too leggy, then we were out, you know, more or less, we left the cast, and there was another, say another girl or another boy to come in.
I'm Farina, and he's Buckwheat.
You said it.
By the mid-1930s, the Little Rascals seemed to be more popular than ever. Few fans knew the kids' real names, but that didn't matter. Alfalfa, Buckwheat, Stymie, Darla, and Spanky rivaled grown-up stars like Gable, Garbo, Davis, and Crawford. The Our Gang stars, Carl Switzer, Darla Hood, George McFarland, and Bill Thomas, were legends in their own minds. By 1936, 8-year-old Carl Alfalfa Switzer already had a reputation for being difficult.
Say, what's this thing all about? Oh, that? It's just a contract to star me in opera. That's all. I see my name in lights now. People applauding, crowds acting autograph. Oh, it's beautiful.
Co-star Jerry Tucker played the nasty rich kid.
Alfalfa, he just did his own thing. Sometimes when the director would say, Alfalfa, you're wanted on the set, they couldn't find him. People kind of leaned over backwards for his antics. He wasn't liked by too many of the kids because he felt that he was the big star of the whole thing and that everybody should kind of kowtow to him.
Come on, Porky, I gotta get my rest.
Darla Hood said she was at times terrified of Alfalfa.
Darla wasn't the only one. As time went on, the Little Rascals became little prima donnas. Actor Carl Switzer led the pack, but the kids' days of fun and fame were numbered. On screen, the Little Rascals were all freckles and smiles, but the kids had adult-sized egos and tempers to match. For Our Gang producer Hal Roach, going to work was like going to war.
Anytime you're dealing with the children actors, you're dealing with something that's very potentially volatile.
By 1936, Carl Alfalfa Switzer was a star, and he knew it. Alfalfa was also a bully. The late director, George Sidney.
He would step on the other kid's feet. He would take big nails in his pocket and stick it into the other kids and hit the kids and things like that. You get ready to shoot a scene, and there'd be a little kid going, ah!
Author Jim Parrish.
He would lose his temper. He was very prone to flying off the handle. If things didn't go right, he would get very irritated. If he liked you, he liked you. If he didn't like you, he would certainly let you know it, and fistfights weren't out of the question for him.
The late Kenneth Smith played Waldo.
And my dad told me a story that I didn't remember, that Alfalfa had thrown a cracker, firecracker, at my dad as he was walking someplace, and it exploded, you know, on my dad's back.
There was one time when a cameraman wanted to go to lunch, and Alfalfa or one of the kids was having trouble with a line, and the cameraman said something like, oh, come on, can't you get this right? Let's go to lunch.
He got very peeved. And so to show how peeved he was, when they did take a break, he got all his friends to start chewing up gum. They made into a great big wad.
Alfalfa had this big wad of gum went to the camera, opened up the camera, and spread this gum all throughout the gears. So that afternoon, nobody worked except the cameraman.
So he had a way of getting even with people who he didn't like.
Alfalfa's pranks caused quite a stink on the set. Tommy Bond played Butch.
One time, he kind of urinated on one of the lights.
So when they came in to that stage that day and turned on those lights, and the lights heated up, it caused a terrible stench.
And everybody had to get out of the stage because they couldn't stand the smell.
He liked to play jokes on people, and frankly, none of us thought it was very funny.
By the mid-1930s, Hollywood was changing. Short comedies were on their way out, and feature-length films were in. Roach wanted to play with the big boys. In 1938, the producer sold the Our Gang series to MGM.
MGM pretty thoroughly took over the series, and it turned out kind of a factory production of Our Gang comedies, which was kind of a sad end to a really, really good series.
It was sort of a pale shadow of what had been before. The things weren't as funny, the new replacements for the kids weren't as interesting. The studio wanted to make everything look too pretty and too nice.
Good evening, folks. We open our slow show with a hot number led by that king of swing, Cam Buckley.
And it ruined the whole natural flavor of what the series had been with Hal Roach in the beginning.
By 1944, the Our Gang series had run its course.
It should have ended probably 4 or 5 years before it did end. I think it was just a money decision. MGM just found out that there wasn't really any point of doing this when they could produce, you know, Tom and Jerry and cartoons. If they wanted short films, it was much cheaper to do that than produce a short comedy. And I think the times were just changing and people were going to see features.
When the series came to an end, many of the child stars were left wondering what's next. Delmar Watson played the school jock.
All of a sudden, they're 12 years old, they got pimples, they're going through puberty. Nobody wants them anymore, and they say, what happened? What did I do? Why doesn't anybody want me anymore?
Carl Alfalfa Switzer won a few roles, but he was hopelessly typecast.
Unfortunately, in his career, he had the same problem that most child stars did. He had started to become a teenager, his voice was changing, he was growing taller, he was no longer the cute little kid.
A lot of them never make sense of it, and how do you translate success as a child star into an adult actor?
Author Marvin Wolfe.
His shtick was he would sing off key, and it was very endearing. In a kid, and as an adult, it gets tiresome.
We play it on in chapter, and you will hear the best authority declaring.
No matter how hard he tried, Switzer couldn't escape the role which made him famous.
Alfalfa had other problems. He had nothing to fall back on. He had no education to fall back on.
Switzer's reputation didn't help his case.
Alfalfa was a very troubled young man, and he became a troubled man in his 20s who just could never. He really wanted to be in movies, and he wanted to realize that his career in Hollywood, which never took hold because nobody wanted to hire him, and that coupled with his general personality, I think he ran into a lot of problems.
Causing all of this trouble on sets for directors and other kids. It was going to be difficult for him. He was always the object of ridicule.
In the middle 40s, he did come back in a very low-budget junior version of Our Gang, sort of as teenagers, and that was called the Gas House Kids. And that lasted 2 or 3 entries, and then that one kapoof. And that was really the basic end of his starring years.
Film studies professor Todd Boyd.
Anytime you take a child and you put them in this shark-infested world of popular culture, and the time comes when they can no longer trade on that, when they have to be normal adults like everyone else, they're back in the world, and their mind has been manipulated at such an early age, yet now they're told to exist alongside everyone else, but they haven't been properly prepared to do so.
Many of the Our Gang stars found themselves in the poorhouse. Sidney Kibrick played Woim.
We worked in the studio system when there wasn't any obligation by the studio to put a certain amount of money away out of each paycheck and for our future.
Oh, how I wish that residuals were paid. No, we did not get a nickel. We got paid for what we did, and that was it.
But money wasn't the kids' only problem.
There was a high incidence of substance abuse. They would go into drugs or into alcohol because they were just so miserable trying to cope with adulthood.
In 1944, after 22 years and more than 200 episodes, the Our Gang film series finally wrapped. But for many of the young stars, their problems were just beginning. Growing up outside the spotlight was painful, and for some, deadly.
Child stars wonder why at 12 or 13 they're a has-been and why they're the object of ridicule.
Life was tough for the Little Rascals after the series shut down. Some of the cast members tried to make it as civilians, but the curse was never far behind. Little Rascal alum Robert Wheezer Hutchins didn't have lofty goals. He just wanted to be a regular kid. After graduating high school in 1942, Robert pumped gas for a living. The next year, he joined the Army Air Corps and served his country during World War II. In 1945, Wheezer enrolled to become an air cadet.
For the longest time, nobody knew what happened to Wheezer.
Hutchins never got his wings. The week that Wheezer was due to graduate from flight school, the unthinkable happened. The 20-year-old cadet was killed in a terrible mid-air collision. Strangely, the other pilots survived the accident without a scratch and landed safely. The curse soon claimed another victim. William Robert Laughlin, who played Froggy, was the next cast member to be struck down. Laughlin's favorite pastime was bicycling. In 1948, Froggy got a job delivering newspapers on his bike. But the job didn't last long. That year, while on his paper route, Robert Laughlin was hit by a truck and killed instantly. Froggy was just 16 years old. By the early 1950s, the Our Gang kids found a new audience. The old Our Gang series made its way to television under a new name, The Little Rascals. Despite renewed popularity, cast members were still having a hard time. Carl Alfalfa Switzer desperately wanted to regain his star status, but finding work as an adult actor was nearly impossible. For years, Switzer drifted from one menial job to another. By late 1958, 30-year-old Carl reached the end of his rope. The down-and-out rascal was living in Northern California, scraping by as a bartender and hunting guide. In 1959, the 31-year-old bully finally met his match.
He borrowed a dog, a hunting dog, from a friend of his, a welder named Bud Stilts. Dog ran off, and he put up a reward of $35. And somebody found the dog and brought it in, and Alfie bought him a couple of drinks. And by the time the reward and the drinks were factored in, he was out $50.
During these last days, he'd been drinking, brooding over this $50.
He got it in his head that the money that he had spent to retrieve this dog was owed to him by the dog's owner.
Alfalfa wanted his $50 back. Stilts refused.
So Alfalfa one day, getting very hot-tempered, rushed over to his ex-partner's house.
He takes out a knife, a switchblade knife.
And then started claiming, you give me this money or I'm going to kill you.
About that time, Stilts comes out holding the gun. Stilts didn't screw around, he just shot him. Just once. And down he went. And by the time the ambulance came and took him, hauled him off to the hospital, he had bled to death. He was gone. Whatever his demons were, he died for $50. That's pretty stupid.
On January 26, 1959, 4 days after Alfalfa's death, a jury found that Bud Stilts acted in self-defense, and all criminal charges were dropped. That month, Carl Switzer was buried in Hollywood Memorial Park Cemetery.
January 22nd, 1959 was the day that Alfie, Carl Switzer, died. And unfortunately, it happened to be the same day that Cecil B. DeMille died. And so Alfie's obit got a little box down in a corner, and Cecil B. DeMille got pages and pages and pages. It seems like he got screwed even in death.
On Alfalfa's stone, there's a dog, and people that go there think that's Pete the Pup from the gang. But it was because he used hunting dogs. Somebody, I think, had defaced it and put a ring around the dog's eye.
1959, Carl Alfalfa Switzer bullied his way right into an early grave. He was shot to death at the age of 31. But Switzer wasn't the only rascal with bad karma. Trouble also found little Scotty Beckett, a.k.a. Scotty.
Scotty had the drugs and the alcohol problem, and again, this chip on your shoulder.
Like so many of the Little Rascal cast members, Scotty Beckett wasn't prepared for the rejection he faced as a grown-up actor.
He did act after Our Gang in a number of productions, but he was never able to regain what he had with Our Gang, and I think his personality also probably lended for him to become a problem drinker.
Suddenly he was starting drinking more, getting more unhappy, and the same syndrome that happened to so many other actors. He just couldn't deal with the fact that now he was a young adult and nobody wanted him. And then very soon thereafter couldn't get any more work at all. And then he got into more serious trouble, started getting involved in things he shouldn't have, ended up in jail, got out of jail, went back in jail, promised he wouldn't do it anymore.
Beckett's life was a mess. His marriage failed. He had drug problems and a police record. The former child star often got into arguments and brawls. On May 8, 1968, Scotty, bruised and beaten, checked himself into a hospital. 2 days later, 38-year-old Scotty Beckett was dead.
He did leave something of a suicide note. It's a little unclear exactly the circumstances surrounding his death, but I think it would be safe to say he probably was very tired of living.
Dara, of all people.
Fate wasn't much kinder to Our Gang sweetheart Darla Hood. Unlike her colleagues, Darla had better luck staying in showbiz. She formed her own singing group, Darla Hood and the Enchanters.
She did fairly well after Our Gang and went on to a small musical career and kind of kept working in the industry, doing a lot of voiceovers and so forth.
Darla met with success until 1979. That year, she went into the hospital for minor surgery. Darla never came out. After her operation, 48-year-old Hood contracted a fatal case of hepatitis.
It was a shame to lose her, and I'm not sure if there's really anything more to the story other than it was probably just a medical problem and a mishap.
Or was it? The Little Rascal curse was about to strike again. Just a year later, the life of another beloved rascal came to a sudden end. William Thomas, better known as Buckwheat, suffered a fatal heart attack on October 10, 1980. Exactly 46 years to the day his mother first took him through the gates of Hal Roach Studios. Buckwheat's predecessor was the next rascal to fall prey to the curse. From 1930 to 1935, Matthew Beard appeared on the Our Gang series as Stymie, the lovable, wide-eyed kid.
I'm sure the mouse ate it.
As a child, Matthew carried a heavy load. Stymie's paycheck supported his 13 brothers and sisters. But when the gig ended, the youngster was left to fend for himself. Matthew's brother, Rene Beard.
After 10 years old, you're washed up in a sense. It's cold, you know.
It's almost a cruel joke. You have enticed someone with this window of opportunity. You have dangled this carrot of success and celebrity in front of them, and then at a certain age, you pull it back. And you send him back into the world as a black child trying to navigate the maze of racist America.
After leaving the series in 1935, Matthew tried becoming an ordinary kid. He entered public school in Los Angeles.
He had to go back into the regular, life, and it was, on the east side, was a lot of guys that were, tough.
I would say it was quite difficult to move between, this place where you're being made into a star and then to have to exist as another anonymous, faceless black person with very little power. It must have been devastating on the psyche of Stymie.
Before finishing 11th grade, 16-year-old Matthew dropped out of high school. Soon after, Beard was hooked on marijuana. As a teenager, Matthew committed petty crimes to support his drug habit.
He got arrested when he had marijuana in his pocket. So at that time, it was, reefer madness. It was really marijuana, and it made headlines and all that. Well, they put him in jail. Well, while he was in jail, some other inmates hooked him on heroin.
After he got out of jail, Matthew tried to kick his nasty habit. But the one-time child star couldn't stay clean. By age 30, he became a full-blown junkie. In 1957, Beard was charged with the possession and sale of heroin. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. 6 years later, Matthew was released from the corrections facility in Fort Worth, Minnesota. But Stymie hadn't changed.
He knew everybody, so he was always in a fast-moving crowd, and I'd be out of breath from trying to keep up with him. You know, that's the way he's always on, one of those type of personalities. So he was always around fast women and the in crowd, and that's what they were doing. So he got into it that way. And once you're hooked, it's, you know, it's bad news.
All that fast living caught up with Stymie. By the mid-1960s, the addict was lost. A friend urged Beard to check into a drug rehab facility in Santa Monica, California.
He got in pretty bad shape, and then somebody told him about Synanon. So I think he was so sick, he just literally sat on their steps, and then they took him in. They could really clean somebody and get that out of their system and let them get their lives together.
Matthew spent 7 years at Synanon and tried to build a new life for himself. But just as Stymie was getting it together, something horrible happened. On January 7, 1981, Rene Beard went to visit his brother. When he knocked on the door, no one answered.
His car is open. Say, actually, one of the windows is open on his car. And I said, that's kind of funny. Like he, you know, if he was going to leave, he would have rolled up all his windows. So I went and started beating on the door and everything, and then I began to hear a little noise, like a murmur, like, and then I realized he was in there. When I got in there, he had a stroke, and he had fell and hit his head, and he was, you know, on the floor, you know, and I picked, I said, Junior, what's, you know, and he just said, fun, fun, fun. That's the last thing he said, and I laid him down in bed and told him to, you know, call the ambulance, you know, and then he kind of just went into like a coma after that, and he never regained consciousness.
Matthew was rushed to USC Medical Center, but there was little the doctors could do for the former child star. Stymie contracted pneumonia and died on January 8, 1981. He was only 56 years old. Nearly 4 decades had passed since Matthew Beard appeared on the silver screen. Few remembered, even fewer cared. By the end of the 1980s, 9 little rascals died tragically and under bizarre circumstances. Many believed the Little Rascals were cursed, but the most shocking surprises were yet to come.
There's never been a question of motive in this case. What this lady did to his life was horrific.
As the 90s rolled in, the Little Rascals were still popular with television audiences, decades after the shows were filmed. The ABC News program 2020 ran a segment entitled, Whatever Happened to Our Gang? The segment featured the actor who producers thought played Buckwheat. Working as a grocery bagger in Tempe, Arizona, for 30 years, Bill English told people he was the original Buckwheat. But the groceryman's claim to fame turned out to be a hoax. This Buckwheat was bogus. The real actor, William Thomas, died in 1980. ABC apologized for the mistake, and the story's producer resigned.
You'll see articles in magazines and newspapers and people claiming to have been kids who were either never in the series or claiming to be Spanky or claiming to be Darla. There's still people going around claiming to be Darla. I don't know why that is. I don't know why our gang inspires imposters probably more than any other series ever made.
The Buckwheat scandal made big headlines. So did the passing of the Little Rascals creator, Hal Roach, in 1993. The producer died at the ripe old age of 100. Roach could never top the success of the Little Rascals, no matter how hard he tried.
I just don't think that it ever really gelled for Hal Roach after the war, although he kept working and he kept producing and kept making films and was in the business his whole life. It just didn't quite have the same feel to him.
Hal Roach turned the studio over to his son in the late 50s, and it quickly went bankrupt and was torn down. It's not there now.
The Little Rascals lost another one of the gang in 1993, George Spanky McFarland. Like his colleagues, Spanky was trapped by the role that made him a star.
Spanky McFarland came back to Hollywood in the late 40s to try to get work as an actor. And his exact quote was, he discovered that Hollywood wasn't buying what Spanky had to sell. He couldn't find employment. And not just employment as an on-camera performer, but anywhere in the studios, even carrying mail, delivering film cans. He was shut out.
With nothing left for him in Hollywood, George went back home to Texas. He joined the Air Force and was later discharged for financial hardship. After leaving the Air Force, McFarland was flat broke. He tried to pick up the pieces. He worked at a factory and a hamburger stand. He also made popsicles for a living.
That Hollywood couldn't find room for him is a tragedy. It's shameful. It's shameful. How much of his life did they take?
But Spanky was no pushover.
My pal Spanky tried for years to get something, but it never worked out.
Spanky was very bitter about having been used like that and not having made any money. They didn't get any residuals.
They made movies that they figured would be shown once, and then that would be it. Nobody had any idea that they could ever be shown. At the time, television wasn't around. They had no idea they would be shown there. Of course, video market, they would have never dreamed of such a thing.
Spanky McFarland was a mature person, and he fought back for unauthorized use of his images on T-shirts and you know, the kind of stuff that you see at stores all the time with, you know, there's Spanky's face. And he always fought on behalf of the castmates to get some payment for somebody, and it never happened.
In June of 1993, George Spanky McFarland died of a heart attack. In 2001, the Little Rascals made news again, but this time it wasn't in the obits. Actor Robert Blake became a suspect in the brutal slaying of his wife, Bonnie Lee Bakley. Blake appeared as Mickey in the Little Rascals.
Leads, clues, we're receiving information, conducting interviews, going in many directions.
Nearly 1 year after the shooting, on the evening of April 18, 2002, LAP detectives arrested Blake for the murder of his wife.
We believe the motive is that Robert Blake had contempt for Bonnie Bakley. He was he felt that he was trapped in a marriage that he wanted no part of.
Robert Blake denies the charges. Today, the actor sits in the LA County Jail awaiting his trial. Even the little rascal who achieved the most success as an adult couldn't outrun what many believed was the Our Gang curse. Those little rascals who thought they beat the odds were in for a cruel surprise. Kenneth Darwood Smith lived a long and healthy life, only to die tragically and mysteriously at age 72. Smith, who played Waldo, quit acting in his teens. He became a Seventh-day Adventist and later a minister. In May 2002, the Reverend was killed when a truck hit him while he was taking a morning stroll. Smith died of head injuries later that day.
They haven't solved the mystery of his death. The car that hit him, it was some small white pickup, had to come up over the curb to hit him. It's one of those dark mysteries.
Clouds seemed to hang over the cast of the Little Rascals. Many of their lives were cut short by fatal blows, freak accidents, and illness. Was it coincidence or a curse? The disappearance of another rascal only added to the mystery.
He was found in the desert. He had been stabbed to death.
On October 5, 2002, the body of a man was found in the desert 25 miles outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. Police identified the corpse as 87-year-old J.R. Smith. The curse struck again. Smith was one of the last surviving Little Rascals. He played the part of Freckles. Yetta Gibson covered the story for KLAS-TV in Las Vegas.
He had a ring on that symbolized something in Hawaiian. He had a necklace that matched it, and that's how police identified him ultimately.
The Clark County Coroner's Office reported Smith died from multiple stab wounds, and that wasn't all.
A couple of his fingers were missing.
Well, this one was really a shock. Now, Jay was 87 years old, so he has lived a full life, certainly, and longtime Las Vegas resident. His wife passed away about 4 months ago, and as often happens with elderly people, he took in a stranger, a complete stranger.
The stranger was a homeless man named Charles Wayne Crombie.
He was living behind the houses because the neighborhood he lived in, it's kind of like an upscale trailer park, neighborhood. It's filled with a lot of elderly citizen. So this guy was living behind the houses at one point. He was working in people's yards for money. He was going around asking neighbors, hey, can I cut your grass for money? So eventually J.R. Smith let this guy in. He offered him a place to stay. A lot of neighbors around said that he was a very benevolent guy, and he was offering this guy a second chance. So he let him stay in his house, and everybody was suspicious of the relationship.
According to Las Vegas police, Freckles was last seen by his family on October 1st.
He has a daughter who lives here in Las Vegas, and she went to the police and she filed a missing persons report.
Family members also became alarmed when they realized Smith's 1998 beige Buick was missing. Police began searching for Charles Wayne Crombie. They wanted to question Crombie about Smith's whereabouts. According to news reports, police first picked up 46-year-old Graydon Brooker, who looked like J.R. Smith's roommate, Charles Wayne Crombie.
Police caught up with that guy. They questioned him, they cleared him of the murder.
Police later suspected that the real killer was Charles Wayne Crombie, the 52-year-old drifter who took advantage of Smith's generosity and then took Freckles' life.
Police got a tip from some people in the community who saw this guy in one of the casinos on Flamingo. It was actually the Palms Casino. Police came there and they made the arrest.
At 6 p.m. on October 24, 2002, police arrested Charles Wayne Crombie for the murder of J.R. Smith. According to news reports, Crombie confessed to the murder a few days later.
It's very sad. He let this guy live with him. Nobody understood it, but he let him do it, and he, you know, from what his neighbors and his family and friends say, he was trying to give this guy a chance, and this is what happened.
Charles Wayne Crombie is currently awaiting trial on the murder charges. With Freckles gone, who would be next? In October 2002, the oldest living rascal was found stabbed to death in the Las Vegas desert. J.R. Smith, better known as Freckles, was a widower whose kindness allegedly led to tragedy at the hands of a desperate drifter. He became the latest Our Gang casualty.
It's a shame that when a person passes away, the first thing somebody thinks of is something that really should be left alone.
The Little Rascals' misfortunes are curious, to say the least. Creator Hal Roach didn't put much stock in the theory the show was cursed.
Hal Roach, who produced and created Our Gang, lived to be over 100. He often was asked, well, look at what happened to all the people that had been in your cast. This one's dead, this one's in substance abuse, this one, whatever. And he would sort of laugh it off.
A lot of people have messy ends, they just do. And we begin to string these things together, these stories together, and we think, oh, it's a curse. When the fact is it pretty much matches the demographics of death across the country.
We all have the brook of life to cross. And when you're going across that brook, there are rocks that you're going to step on. And sometimes we slip and sometimes we don't. It's a shame that things like this have to happen.
No other film series has lasted as long or been as cherished by so many.
The innocence that was portrayed with a bunch of kids.
Maybe the mice had it. Maybe the mice had it. I'm sure the mouse had it.
Trying to find ways to enjoy themselves. And it's just the innocence. I think that's the beauty of the Little Rascals.
I think that if Alfie were alive today, he'd be so proud and so happy at the knowledge of the people who love him and loved all the kids and the Rascals. It'd make him so happy.
I'm a slave to my art.
People are going to be talking about Our Gang, and they're going to be watching these comedies 80 years from now, just as we're talking about the ones that were originally made 80 years ago.
Hope you like